down to the end of this runway, turn around and take off.
Alright. Are there places around here where you can do your float?
There is?
Yeah.
Yeah, not far from here. Well, Aurelia. So from here it would be a 25-minute drive.
Oh, that's not bad. I mean, that's eventually the goal, is to be able to fly a float plane.
Yeah, float planes are awesome. Now the cool thing is this is my flaps down here. Okay. So this lever I'm going to need to reach at the beginning of the flight and at the end of the flight. Other than that, it's going to be in the down position. I don't need to use it. Now this aircraft is in the ultralight category because of its weight. So it's not like the old days of thinking of ultralights as, you know, kites with poles and stuff like that. This is built essentially to the same standards and spec as a Cessna. A low-wing aircraft, the performance is almost identical. The speed is the same, the cruise speed. And you can operate these things for a fraction of the cost of, say, a Cessna or a Beaver.
It sort of has the feel of one of those Red Bull Air Racer acrobatic planes.
Yeah. Alright, so this is our runway. So let's get this air conditioning turned on by me accelerating and taking off. So if you're ready for it, I'm ready for it.
Oh yeah, let's go.
And Midland traffic, Juliet Kilo Yankee on the roll. Report. So it's going to be a little turbulent on the way up.
I can see what you mean about it really sort of getting caught by the wind.
Yep. But even all planes today will get caught by this. This is kind of nasty today because the heat.
Yeah. And that's just the heat rising off the runway?
Yeah, heat rising off the runway and the wind coming over those trees.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of creating almost like what they call an eddy. You know, the wind's coming over and circling.
Okay.
So you can see it's going to get more stable the higher we climb. Right now we're only 350 feet over the ground. So I'm going to bring this thing up to, I don't know, say 1,500 feet over the ground. The air should smoothen out. Visibility in this thing is amazing.
Yeah, it's like you got full 360.
Absolutely. You can see how the air is getting smoother up here.
Yeah.
Not so much of the wings dancing anymore.
Approaching altitude.
So we're now approaching 1,000 feet over the ground. I'm sure we're going to want to fly in the direction of Palm Beach.
Altitude.
So we'll do that for sure.
I take a small plane over those big jets any day.
Yeah. Yeah, I've flown all types of things, and I'll tell you, I'm a sucker for this stuff because you're really flying it, right?
Yeah.
Some of the big stuff, it almost takes the fun out of it, right?
Yeah, everything's sort of done for you.
Yeah. Now, mind you, this plane has all that. This has autopilot, full GPS guidance, all of that stuff. But for training purposes, I never turn it on. But we are at 2,300 feet above sea level. So this is 1,500 feet over the ground. So you'll see something that's pretty interesting. If I trim this plane nicely, there's a little trim tab on the very back of the plane.
Yep.
I control it by pushing this up and down button on here. If I trim it properly and set my RPM, which is this is my throttle, this plane should fly pretty darn level. If I let go of it,
oh yeah,
she's flying level. She's starting to list a little bit to the right, and I'm just pushing that stick a little bit left. But other than that, look at that, she flies itself.
Wow.
So for straight and level flight, that's pretty simple. So to get you flying this thing, the air is nice and smooth in this area. I'm going to show you how we do this.
All right.
So take your left hand and put your left hand on that control stick. And the reason why I say left is if you were in full pilot training, you're going to need your right hand available to do throttle, buttons, radio, all that kind of stuff. So you got your left hand on that control stick, and I want you to just feel the motions I'm going to do on this control stick when I turn this aircraft.
All right.
So right now it's already turning itself. In order to stop the turn, I'm just going to give a little pull like that to feel how the turn was arrested. I'll get this thing flying level, pull a little bit more. Once you find the level spot, you just kind of correct by giving it a little knock back, and it'll hold it there. Now if I want to turn this thing to the right, you just feel the pull on the stick. You see the turn starts, and it'll keep continuing to bank until I arrest it by pushing back.
All right.
So this doesn't give us a great sight picture over the water, so we'll go towards land because you're going to lose the horizon. So you can see that the motions are very, very subtle on this stick.
Yeah.
You can almost feel when I'm doing it, it's just so small. Now if I want to climb this plane, I just pull a little bit towards me. Just like that. You can feel that nose coming up. As we climb, one thing happens is the airspeed starts slowing down. So what I do is I watch this guy right here. There's my airspeed. Okay. As we're going to climb, you can see it's going slow, right? It's starting to go to 60. Now 60 is the area we don't want to go any slower than in this plane. So now that we're at 60, I put the nose forward. Okay. And you'll see once I level this thing off, it's going to start speeding up. If I truly wanted to climb, I'd pitch that nose back and then add power.
Okay.
You know, just like a car, you're driving up a hill, you push your foot down on the gas pedal harder. Right?
Yeah.
So the same physics apply. I'm just going to...
traffic with the triple on the red, 3-1, left hand turn out heading south, Collingwood.
Just going to make a radio announcement here just so we don't have to have a conflict with another pilot.
All right.
And Midland area traffic, SportStar, India, Juliet, Kilo Yankee, just over the area of Palm Beach, flying southwest along the shoreline at 2,400 feet. Collingwood area traffic, this helicopter Foxtrot, Lima Bravo Alpha, over the town of Collingwood, coming into the main ramp for fuel.
So I want you to get a feel for it. I'll let you do whatever you want to do with that control stick. I'm going to keep my hand here.
All right.
I want you to just start playing with it until you can kind of learn what it does.
Collingwood, Unicom, Delta, Juliet, Foxtrot, Airport, Advisory.
It really is sensitive. Like it just takes a little nudges to make it.
That's right. Yeah, the key to initial parts of flight training is just try to be, it's funny to say, try to be as relaxed as you can be.
Yeah.
Because just know full well that you're sitting next to an instructor. I'm not going to let anything happen. There's nothing you can do to this plane that could hurt us.
Yeah.
Left crosswind for 3-1.
Well, that's one thing I've always said is that panic solves nothing.
Yep.
Collingwood traffic, push on X-ray Romeo Bravo, waiting to back.
If I find that you're doing something a little too aggressive, I'll just verbally let you know, and if I have to, I will just take control and correct a little bit.
All right.
Hey, Collingwood traffic, X-ray Romeo Bravo, backtracking runway 31 Collingwood.
So the important thing for the beginning of flight training is try to keep your eyes outside of the cockpit, and that's what you're doing, I noticed, because you don't want to become a pilot that's flying by the instruments. The instruments is something that we use as reference points. Of course, we have targets we need to meet, but to get the initial feel of flight, you need to be looking forward, outside, seeing what the aircraft is doing. And eventually, in time, you program your body to be responsive to these G-force changes. You can almost feel how your body will be sagging a little bit.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit of time to program it, but it comes. You can almost feel like you're doing a little bit of a pullback because you felt we got heavier for a second.
Yeah.
I'm just fine-tuning throttle every once in a while.
Alright.
It's too bad it's so milky sky today. Normally the visibility is really good here.
Yeah, I guess the humidity just really sort of pulls that moisture up off the lake.
Absolutely.
I was out canoeing on Lake Erie last weekend, and it was so hot and so humid that at one point we just totally lost the horizon. Like, just looking out of the lake, you could not see anything at all.
Sort of like when you look out there, straight out in Georgian Bay, you don't see any horizon. So right now, you're gently climbing the whole time. If you want a reference point, an instrument to look at to tell if you're climbing or descending, this guy right here will give you immediate feedback. If the needle is on 0, that means we're level.
Okay.
So there's level. But the thing you don't want to do is stare at that thing, because then you're going to get lost outside.
Oh, yeah, right.
So you just want to kind of peek at it every once in a while to double check to see if your inputs on the stick are correct.
Collingwood traffic 10 miles south. We'll be joining left base for 31 in 3.5 minutes.
How's it feeling so far?
Amazing.
Yeah, you got the correction thing down, Pat.
So the natural tendency of the plane is to sort of sink when it's turning, right? Like it wants to go.
And what that is, that's Newton's third law. So, you know, we have an object in motion, will stay in motion unless you apply a force to it, then it will.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is by doing a turn, we're creating drag.
Bravo is departed runway 31 Collingwood, and
if you think about it, the propeller is pulling us in a forward direction because it's bolted to the front of the plane, pulling that way. The second we start changing that trajectory, we're screwing off that motion, right? So all of a sudden, we're creating drag to that positive airflow, and drag will cause us to start losing our energy, therefore going downwards. So a natural thing that you want to do in a turn is gently compensate for the turn. The steeper your turn, the more you pull back on that stick. That's the basic definition. When you get more advanced, there's a little more to it than that, because if you're in a super steep turn and you pull back on the stick, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble and enter a condition called a spiral.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that. We're far from that ever happening, the types of turns you're doing. That's like the Red Bull guys. You know? They'll be digging along straight away and they'll jack this stick left and pull back.
Yeah.
And the plane will just kind of, and you're getting about 6 Gs. And a plane like this couldn't handle that on the wings.
Yeah. I remember reading about World War II pilots that would jam the controls one way, but then turn the rudder the other to do like a little sort of slidey skid thing to avoid enemy fire.
We do that. That's slipping. That's called slipping in aircraft. Yeah. I can show you what that's like whenever we'll go back in that area later, but you can keep going this way. That's Wasaga Beach.
Oh, yeah.
Left base for 31 in 2 minutes.
I'm just going to listen to make sure there's no other planes because they're impossible to see today.
Yeah.
And Midland Collingwood area traffic, SportStar India Juliet Kilo Yankee, about 2 miles east of Wasaga Beach 1, traveling westbound along the shoreline at 2,900.
So what is the operational ceiling of this?
13,500.
Wow.
Yeah. But the catch to that is, you can go up there, but you need oxygen.
I was going to say.
Yeah, I've only done it once, and I spent maybe 10 minutes up there. And I did it with another flight instructor friend. We did have a bottle of oxygen on board in case we needed it. But 10 minutes up there was enough to feel hypoxia, and we descended right away. Yeah, that's just a little high up there. And to me, the joys of flying are not up there. You're too high.
Yeah.
You don't get that reference point to the ground. You're not seeing anything. You lose the fun of being above everything, right? Because you're so damn high.
Yeah. One of the last times I went out with the bush pilot, he brought the plane right down. The Chapleau River gets really wide. There's like a lake in places. And he just brought it like maybe a few hundred feet, or not even a few hundred feet, like maybe 100 feet off the deck, and opened the throttle up and just like going between the islands and stuff. It was so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some advanced flying to do that kind of stuff. That's great. I'm not supposed to teach that kind of stuff. Not that I can't do it, but it's not something you learn as being a pilot. Once a pilot gets their license, then they go for upgraded things, so stunt classes. Then you can do that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't recommend anybody doing anything 100 feet off the ground.
No, he was incredibly experienced. He'd been flying since he was a young, pretty much a kid. He, his parents ran the flying service, and his dad was a World War II pilot and one of the best bush pilots operating in Northern Ontario.
Nice.
So he sort of grew up doing those things.
Yeah. Oh, and that's great. I love that kind of stuff too, right? But I'm just saying it's not a requirement to get your license, right?
No.
It's not going to be taught to get the license. What you do on your own time with your license is great, but and there is plenty of stunt pilots that will teach you that stuff. The thing is, it feels like we're moving very slow, right?
Yeah.
Right now we're doing 77 knots. So we're moving. And we're going to start increasing speed when we go in this direction because the wind's drifting that way. So 100 knots is equal to 115 miles per hour.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we are really clipping along that.
Yeah, we're moving. So to convert this to kilometers, I'm terrible with the knots to kilometers, but we got to be doing 145 at least right now.
Yeah.
And we're just cruising, right? This is not full power of this plane. You have great control of this thing.
Thank you.
I am not doing anything. Hands-free.
I guess I learned a bunch by osmosis.
Yeah, it happens.
Always sitting in the co-pilot seat. Of course, it didn't have a wheel or anything.
Yeah.
They took that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I always like to joke saying flying the plane is the easy part. It's the navigation, weather, meteorology, all that stuff is the tougher part that a lot of pilots have hang-ups on. Air law, radio procedures.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm most worried about, is all the book learning.
Yeah. It's not, you know, for this category of aircraft, it's not that intense. The ground school requirement for, this is advanced ultralight, is 20 hours. For a private pilot license, it's 40 hours. However, you're learning almost all the same things. The only topic we don't cover in ground school is night flying, because these are not allowed to fly at night after sunset. And we don't learn what they call VOR direction finding, VFR direction finding.
VFR
direction finding. So that is an actual instrument that's located on a plane that hones into a beacon that's on the ground, and they're all over the world, these little aviation beacons. So you got to learn how to fly based on this instrument to know how to fly to these separate points.
Okay.
So it's a navigation part, and we don't do that with ultralights. Mind you, there's ultralights that have that gauge in it. This has it. No, this has all that stuff. But it's not a requirement to learn as part of the course.
I'd like to learn how to fly by instrument, but I hear so many horror stories of people who trust their instruments over their eyes, or trust their eyes over their instruments, and end up on the ground.
Yep. Yeah, the way it works in licensing, like this is one category of license, ultralight, so you can fly.
Looks like a radio, got a Bravo.
You can fly a two-seater aircraft just like this, anywhere in Canada,
Thank you.
any distance in Canada. At an airport in Canada, if you have a transponder, which this plane has, you can fly into large airports. You're not limited from anywhere. You just cannot fly at night. And cannot fly into the U.S. with this aircraft unless you are an instructor.
Okay.
But what people do is they come to a guy like me to get trained, to start their flight training, because they have aspirations of getting the private pilot license, which allows you to fly a 4-seater, a 6-seater, an 8-seater, but at a fraction of the cost. So it's like cut your teeth on learning how to fly in a cheap plane, learn how to fly, learn all the air law, learn your weather, your navigation, all that good stuff, radio procedures, get your radio license at $180 an hour, versus going to a private pilot school and paying $250 plus HST per hour, and you need a requirement of 40 hours with an instructor and 20 by yourself. So that's why guys like me exist. I can offer flight training for a fraction of the cost. You're still becoming a pilot, although it's not a 4-seater. But you already know how to fly when you're ready to upgrade to that step. So they can't sit there and milk you on teaching you how to use the radio, how to fly into an airport, how to deal with air law, all that stuff.
It seems like it would be a preferred choice for learning how to fly. It seems like it's a lot more fun to learn how to fly than like a Cessna 180 or a 172 or something like that.
I swear by it. You know, personally, I wish I would have done that.
Area traffic, helicopter Foxtrot, Lima Bravo Alpha, taking off 3-1 for a right-hand turnout towards Wasaga Beach.
Yeah, this is, and these aircrafts, like I say, the pilots that I've been training and turning out on this type of plane, whenever they have went up, some of them decided to go further because they want to fly the whole family around, not just them and their wife or whatever. They all came back to me and have praised it, saying, I'm so glad I started flying on this, because the second I jumped in the Cessna, it was a breeze. There was nothing to learn. It was a heavier aircraft. It was much easier to control. Where this guy here is so touchy, that Cessna, when you turn that yoke, it's sloppy, you know, compared to this. This thing, if you give it a quick push, we're going to be on our side real quick. The Cessna won't do that.
I know the guy that I used to fly with, he would turn the Beaver on its wing every once in a while to just thrill the tourists, but like it seemed like it was a lot of work to get it to do that.
Oh yeah. You want the right airspeed, and you want to slowly get that. This thing will do it right away. So right up there is Penetanguishene Harbour.
Oh yeah.
Over here is Midland Harbour. And off in the distance, you can probably see on the horizon, there's Christian Island.
Yeah. We keep needing to take the boat over there.
Oh, you can take the plane over there and see what's there.
Oh yeah.
They got a lighthouse on the corner there.
Oh yeah, I can just make that out.
Yeah, see, like myself, years ago, I got my private pilot license, right? Spent the money. I was a young kid at the time in my teens.
Traffic for Fox Vector, Romeo Bravo, just south of Christian Island, 1700 feet northbound.
Northbound. I'm just going to make a radio transmission.
Yep.
And Midland area traffic, Julia Kilo Yankee, just west of the field, over the shoreline, traveling north towards Christian Island at 3000. Collingwood area traffic, helicopter Foxtrot, Lima Bravo Alpha, clearing 5 miles of east along the shoreline of Wasaga Beach to 1.7.
That's great. Somebody spoke and the other guy stepped on him.
There's a lot more radio traffic than I would have expected.
Yeah, it was really high this morning. There's lots of radio traffic. I guess right now it's getting too warm for people, so they're landing for lunch.
Oh yeah.
Even my home base airport in Evektor this morning was packed with pilots taking off. But I'm sure they've landed now.
So you fly up from Edenvale?
Yes.
And then run the classes out of Midland?
Yeah, I service both airports, so I try to schedule my Midland stuff all in one time period and then vice versa, right?
Yeah.
I'll do a few hours up here and then a few hours back there. Not a far flight for me, I think 12 minutes.
Okay.
But do you have any questions about the plane or how they fly or?
Not that are occurring to me right now, but I'm sure once I sort of drive away, I'll be like, I should have asked that. The bees sort of pushing me, like now I don't really have my hand, you know, I'm not really doing any inputs, the plane's moving around a little bit, that's just the wind off the lake?
That would be the wind. We're having a steady wind coming at us from that direction, coming this way. So that's where I'm going to show you what the pedals are for.
Alright.
So put your feet on those two pedals.
Yep.
To the left and right. If you rest your feet on them, don't worry, they won't do anything because they operate on a teeter-totter, right? Okay. So if we push even as hard as you want, it won't do anything.
With traffic, this is Cessna 172, India Juliet.
Notice when you're flying straight, if you start pushing your left pedal, watch what happens with the nose of the aircraft. Just start pushing your left foot down.
Overhead and around there again.
Yeah, the nose is starting to come this way a little bit. We're steering the tail of the plane that way by pushing our left pedal. And then, if you want to push your right pedal, see what happens. But to push your right and let your left leg raise. There's sort of that teeter-totter thing going on. But what we use the pedals for is very important for takeoff and landing. But in the air, we use it for wind correction. So if the wind is pushing us from that direction and we want to fly straight to that lighthouse, you'll notice the plane's automatically going to want to drift this way, and that's what I think you were talking about.
Yeah.
You kept having to correct with the stick and steer back to it. So if you find that spot that you want to fly to and you find it's drifting, say to the right, you put a little bit of left pedal, and the left pedal will steer the nose more into the wind and cause us to fly with what we call a crabbed position to that lighthouse. So that way the wings, you're not correcting your wings anymore. You're just kind of doing the correction with your foot once, and you just kind of hold it into that wind, and it'll compensate for that drift. So I can feel the drift happening again, so a little harder on the left.
Traffic, Echoes uniform level, 2500 mouth to the river, headed westbound. Got the helicopter in sight.
So there you go. I think you've arrested the drift there. So it's going to feel like the plane's flying crooked, but we're tracking to the lighthouse.
Okay.
See what I mean?
Yeah, it feels like we're sort of going that way, but we're not.
Exactly. And that just takes time for somebody to get that sight picture in their brain. And over time, it's you know, a few hours of flying around. Usually within 3 hours, people are really good with mastering that. Today the winds are quite gentle, so it's not that abrasive to try to keep up with that drift. But you can imagine seeing what those pedals do. Imagine when you're coming into a landing, odds are you're never going to have a perfectly straight wind coming at you. So you're going to have a little bit of a sideways wind, so that's where you're going to need that pedal to keep that plane straight, because you can imagine what would happen when those wheels touch the runway if the plane is sideways. So that's why we use the pedals to straighten out that tail, to straighten that nose out, so we're going straight down the runway. But the plane might be flying crooked, and then you're using those pedals, right? And so it's just time. It takes time.
I guess after a while it just becomes like driving a car where it's just all feel and...
Yeah, just second nature. It becomes another appendage of you, like another arm.
Stopped in the Collingwood area. This is India Juliet Oscar. We're at 3,500 feet over Collingwood. Northwest bound towards Blue Mountain.
Can't even see Blue Mountain.
No. Too humid today. But right now, I'm sure you know, you're doing a descent. That's perfectly fine.
But I should arrest that descent a little bit.
That's okay. If you're descending, I'm just going to take off power, because we don't need power to go downhill, right?
Approaching altitude.
What's that warning?
It's not so much a warning, it's I set a little bug. See that little guy right there?
Yeah.
I just set that for an altitude. For whatever number I decided to set it at. Generally what I'll do is I will set that to our legal limits in an area.
Yeah.
So if we're flying over a city or a civilization area, we have to be 1,000 feet over the ground.
Okay.
So say we were going to fly over Midland, I would just set that for 1,800 feet. So that way anytime I go there, she'll warn me.
Yeah.
Don't go any lower type thing, right? But when we're in a non-civilized area, which is this area here, even that there's houses there, we can be as low as 500 feet.
Okay.
Midland area traffic, this helicopter Foxtrot Lima Bravo Alpha, 5 miles to the southwest of the field, 2000, traveling eastbound to Port Summer.
You have a really healthy command on that control stick.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm a broken record because I say that to a lot of people.
Huronia area traffic,
you're shocking.
Doctors traveling westbound.
I can't tell you how excited I was when you called me yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like goosebumps because it's something that I've been meaning to do for so long, and it's a matter of getting off your ass and actually doing it and like booking the time. And I'm so glad that I did, and I can't wait to do more of this.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. I started doing this when I was 16 and just carried it through. Just turned 40 and I still have not lost any of the passion for it.
How could you? I mean, this is...
I don't know. There's some flight instructors that hate it. But you know what the difference is? A majority of pilots are flying because they want an airline job.
Yeah.
I have no interest in that lifestyle. I didn't want to work for an airline. I wanted to have a family. I didn't want to be on the road all the time.
Yeah.
So I have no aspirations for that. I got into this purely out of the love of flying, where the majority are doing it just to get hours under their belt so they can apply to a big airline.
That's well, I mean, I guess we all have to, we got our bills to pay,
yep.
But I can't see myself losing the passion for doing this. Maybe it's because it's something that I've always grown up with.
Yeah.
And my father, when he was in high school, read The Adventures of a Young Bush Pilot, and that sort of gave him his love affair for the North and for flying.
Yep.
And being around turbo beavers and turbo honors all my life, and all these little float planes going in and out of the bush.
Yeah.
It still gives me a thrill, but I don't ever want that to go away.
Well, then flight training is for you, because I'll tell you one thing, there's a thrill all the way through it. And even your first 50 hours of solo flying, when you're flying around by yourself, you'll scare yourself a few times, so there's still thrill there.
I can imagine that you have a few white knuckle moments.
Yep.
I imagine your first solo landing and takeoff must be just hair raising.
It is it's one of those lifelong things that checklist, bucket list, celebration, and all that kind of stuff, because it is interesting, right? Every student is worried, shit, did I learn enough? Am I really ready for this?
Yeah.
And what happens if I freak out up there?
Yeah.
But I make sure I don't turn anybody loose until I know that I've flown with them and I've had to do nothing with them for a few hours. Right?
Yeah.
Even after throwing in all kinds of wrenches to try to confuse them. Because we do that, right?
Yeah.
As a students get more advanced, we start throwing wrenches into the training.
And as you should. I mean,
Huronia area traffic and into Victoria.
It's nice to have like simulators and sort of theoretical things, but unless it actually happens, it's not. It's like when you're driving a rear-wheel drive car. When the back end slides out, there's no substitute for having that back end slide out in terms of training.
Absolutely.
In the Craig Leap area, this is India Juliet Oscar.
A few years ago, my wife bought me like a 5-lap package for in a Ferrari and then in a Lamborghini, and like just terrifying. The acceleration and like the Lamborghini doesn't want to slow down until it starts to slow down, and then next thing you know, you're face on the windshield.
That's right.
And throwing those things around corners is just like...
Yeah, I'm here.
Heart in your throat the whole time.
Absolutely.
So what kind of wrenches do you throw then? Like what?
Simulated engine failures, you know, calling out that something's not working on the engine when, you know, we don't actually physically sabotage anything. But mind you, we'll be flying along and I'll just reduce the power to idle and say, where are you landing? Our engine failed, where are we landing? And we essentially have to make a full approach to a place to land. And before we touch the ground, then we'll accelerate and go back to full power and climb up. But essentially I'm grading to see if they picked the right field to try to land in. Did we make it? Because at any given time, that should always be in every pilot's head. Like even as we're flying and I'm talking to you, I'm always looking for a spot to land. Always.
I guess that's one of those things you always have to be prepared for. That
absolutely.
When I learned how to paraglide, what actually happened was that the instructor got busy on the radio with another student. Lost sight of me, and next thing I know, like I hit a gust coming in, it killed all my speed, and I couldn't make the landing zone. And then they said, okay, we'll go for the alternate landing zone, and I couldn't make that either. This is the third landing zone. I found a disused pig farm. They had to. The guy had to come in with a machete to dig a path, like hack a path out of the jungle to help me get out with all my gear.
Oh my.
But it's that kind of thing, like unless it happens,
that's right.
Unless you're paying attention, and panicking at that point would have just killed me.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? Like an instructor will train you to the point where there's no such thing as panic in your reaction anymore. You're kind of expecting all of these unexpecteds, right? You know, diversions to airports, you know, all of a sudden, you know, we're flying, our plan was to fly from here to Toronto, and all of a sudden I'll say, Toronto's socked in with weather, you got to go to Lindsay Airport. And you got to know what compass heading to go in, and you pull out your map and do all this stuff in your lap and do it, right?
Was that a hard thing to learn, like the map reading and that sort of type of navigation?
You know what, I think it's actually very easy if you're being taught properly, if you're taught right from the basics. I see a lot of schools and instructors skip the basics, assume that the students know basic geography, and that's what confuses the majority of people. It can be very daunting if you skip the very first steps, and honestly, I take the globe and I start describing how the lines are divided on the globe. So there's no way I've had anybody get confused about how to do this stuff at the end of it. And I've dealt with not just me, like even other instructors I know that I've kind of trained with. We do it all the same way. We'll start it as Fisher-Price kindergarten as possible, not assuming anybody knows anything about navigation. And if it's taught that way, it's not daunting. But if it's taught the other ways, it'll go right over your head, and you'll be so lost, and you'll tune it out and not even bother trying to learn it. You know? And
everybody's, you know, got their phone GPS and their car GPS. Nobody really needs, or nobody bothers learning how to read a map anymore.
And sadly, you have to. Like, well, not sadly, it's a good thing to know, but you have to be a pilot. Same thing as a captain of a ship, right? You have to know the basics. Longitude, latitude, what they represent, distance between lines,
calling with traffic. India Juliet Oscar is 3,500 feet overhead the field.
So that's our airport there?
That's the airport, yeah, but we still got time.
Oh yeah, no, I just accidentally got us back here.
Well, let's go in that direction then.
Right.
We don't want to get too close to the vicinity of the airport. So that's thermals you're feeling. That's okay.
Altitude.
You're doing the right thing. The nose is up. Let's put the nose down a bit. There we go. That's just a thermal. Because we're over land. That's why we're getting hit with those.
Okay.
Let's go in that direction over the water, and we'll just fly sort of past mid. There's those thermals. They're starting.
Getting used to the feeling again. I do know how they feel. It's
calling with traffic. It's Piper South Kilo Romeo Victor entering the zone from the east.
The key to those things is just don't lose your cool. Have your target.
Downwind to runway 31.
You have to eventually trust that the aircraft is designed mechanically and structurally to handle them.
Yeah.
That's the problem I had with them in the beginning. I was worried those bumps were going to rip my wings off.
Yeah.
You know, and I would always be paranoid to baby the plane. It's a good reaction to have, but it can get you in a position where you're not concentrating on your airspeed anymore.
Yeah.
Piper Cub over the shoreline is 2,500. We're inbound to Collingwood.
And I'll tell you, the speeds we're going right now, those thermals are never going to damage this aircraft.
Yeah.
I think I see your shadow behind you there.
If we were doing 130 knots,
Right
yes.
over the shoreline, the bottom of the bay. I'm 4.7 miles out of the airport.
Roger that. We'll look out for you. We'll keep it a bit high at 2,900.
Okay, I can see your shadow in the water below me there. You're behind me.
So do you, when you get those little bounces of thermal, do you correct, or you just sort of let it ride out a little bit and then?
Depending on what type they are. If they're the type that's raising me up, I usually ride it. If it's the type that's throwing my wings left and right, I absolutely correct.
Okay.
So if it's, essentially think of it like a boxing match.
Yeah.
If you get punched in the left cheek, punch back that direction.
Okay.
So that stick, if that wing lifts on you, you punch it back down. So you actually just sit there and go punch, 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 back and forth, right?
Yeah.
The ones that come up and down, just ride them.
Okay.
Because there's no law saying that we have to be at a certain altitude.
Yeah.
This is uncontrolled airspace. Now, if we were flying in Toronto right now, and a control tower told us to maintain 2,500, then we would be a little bit more forward and back on the stick to maintain. But here it's irrelevant.
I'm actually starting to enjoy the bumping around now.
Good.
Ooh.
You're doing all the right things. You're correcting correctly. A lot of boats out to play today.
Yeah. I wish I were rich enough to afford one of those. What do they say? It's a hole in the water you throw money into?
That's right. Aviation's much cheaper.
I'm happy being on the water or in the air.
Now the ultimate is being on both boats.
Oh, yes.
Last summer I had a float plane in my school. It was an ultralight with floats, 2-seater.
Yeah.
And on a couple of days when it was ignorantly hot, I would come out here and land, had my bathing suit in the back, jump in the lake, cool down for a bit, and then go back and meet my next student.
That was one of my greatest joys to being on a float plane, is that on Tuesdays when the workload was light, because we had to do the drop-offs the next day, we'd just hop in the plane and fly out to whatever lake was big enough to land on and swim off the pontoons and fish out of the plane.
Nice.
It's having grown up in the city and having that in the summertime, it's an experience that so few other kids got to have.
That's what life is for, right? Experiences. You want to enjoy things, and you want to. I couldn't imagine not trying all these things at least to see if it's for you or not, right?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. You live once, enjoy it.
Exactly. You only get one go around. You got to get it before it gets you.
That's right.
But yeah, I have so many friends that are sort of timid and they don't want to do things, they don't want to try new things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why wouldn't you want to run off a mountain? Why wouldn't you want to hop in a plane and fly?
Yeah. I think for most people it's a fear. It's a fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sadly the majority of you know, Hollywood's got a little bit to blame there. They never usually make a good airplane movie.
No. Although I watched Airplane again the other day.
That's a great airplane.
I forgot how funny that movie is.
I actually tried a couple of years ago to contract a rubber company to make the co-pilot for me. They wanted $1,200. I said, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
I thought that'd be hilarious to pull out in the cockpit and blow it up. Little compressor here. So we are over the area called Victoria Harbour.
Okay.
There is highway, that is Highway 400.
Oh yeah.
Or is that Highway 11? That's Highway 400, there we go. So Perry Sound is just right off our left wing in that direction.
Oh yeah. So you must have like hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours piled up.
You.
Is there a point at which you stop, like, well, you know, when you scuba dive, there's a point at which you don't write them down anymore. But I guess you have to, don't you?
I have to because it's a school.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that's keeping me honest. But yeah, there comes a point where you get really lazy on your personal record keeping.
Yeah.
And I'll have to spend a whole Sunday playing catch up, which is terrible.
Yes.
Or in the beginning of your flight training, you're excited, you get out of the plane, you're writing your book right away. That novelty wears off usually after about 40 hours. Then you don't want to write anymore. You save it for those days. So we're going to take this plane and start pointing it in the direction of Midland Airport.
All right.
If you had to guess which way it is, which way would you think?
It should be just out there.
Yeah,
by the white and silver bar.
Okay, I got you.
It's going to be a little bit more this way.
Oh yeah, I find that feel like. I think, is that it? Oh no, that's the road.
I don't think you'll be able to see it from here yet, but I think if you keep turning this thing in the right direction there, we'll find it. Because this is Victoria Harbour, there's there's Midland, and then Penetanguishene all in this straight line. The Midland Airport should be that way.
Well, I don't think I could have picked a better day to do this.
Maybe a better visible day, but other than that, it's nice. So see what I mean here? This thing's got full GPS here.
Yeah.
So, if you were to turn a little bit more to the right, we'll be going straight for it. And that's it right there. These are cheats that we don't use in flight training.
All right.
This is what I use whenever me and my wife want to fly to Montreal or New York City. I use this, right?
How long does it take to fly to New York from here?
New York, I did it in 3.5 hours.
Oh, that's not bad. It must have been really clipping along then.
I had a tailwind that day of about 20 knots, which was nice. But it was 3.5 hours of flight time. It wasn't including the time that I had to land at customs.
Oh, yeah.
Deal with them for 45 minutes.
I guess they must really sort of go over small planes coming in.
They do until they get to know you. Once you're in their system,
yeah.
Going to be joining overhead midfield left Alpha.
But once they get to know you, it's a simple procedure. It just so happened I flew into a busy day, so I was in line behind 4 other guys.
Oh.
So that's what took the time. The processing of doing me took like less than 5 minutes. But just so happened I was waiting in line. So. That's the story of my life, waiting in line.
Yep, hurry up and wait.
But I'm just going to make an announcement to the Midland area traffic.
And Midland area traffic, SportStar India Juliet Kilo Yankee, 8 miles east of the field at 2,600. Going to descend to circuit height, cross overhead the field, and join a Midland downwind for 3-4.
You're controlling this thing like a champ today. I'm not doing barely anything.
I'm so glad to hear that. You know, like so often you want to be amazing at everything, and if you don't aren't that way in the beginning, you're sort of like, oh, I don't know that I want to do that.
You'd be surprised. Like I do this often with new people, and the majority of people will usually take this control stick for, if we do an hour flight, maybe 20 minutes.
Really?
You've had it almost the whole time. You're not doing anything that's unsafe. A lot of people will get into a turn, panic that turns a little steep, and then they'll let go of the controls.
Oh, God.
So I'm always ready for it.
Yeah.
Right? But you haven't done any of that kind of stuff, so... And I can understand it daunting from somebody who's never been in an aircraft. Like they might have been in a commercial aircraft to Florida or something, but they've never been in the front where they can see the visual forward. And so that experience you have certainly helps you.
I just love being in a plane and
runway 31, full stop, Conway.
The idea of being behind the controls is just so much fun.
Oh yeah.
So I guess I should hand the controls back to you now that we're sort of...
No, you could go in that direction. You're doing very well, so I'll let you do it until we get to the part where I have to really take over.
Yeah.
Visual 1 for you, Victor Doctor.
So what we're going to do is make a little bit more of a left. I'm trying to find it. I'm just looking at my landmarks. Oh, okay, I think I see it. I'll tell you when to straighten out the wings. See that road right in front of us?
Yep.
It's right to the left of that road. So right there, now we're aiming straight for it.
I'll let you guys take off.
You can almost see it's a forest with a slice of the forest going this way.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the airport there. Now what we have to do is we have to enter what we call the circuit in order to land.
All right.
In Canada we call it the circuit, the Americans call it the pattern. So if you're ever watching a YouTube video on it, you might find most of it saying the pattern.
Okay.
Both the same thing in both countries. What we have to do is meet certain targets to enter into this. We have to be 1,000 feet above the ground when we are in the vicinity of the airport.
Okay.
So in the case of Midland, we have to be at 1,800 feet. And then we have to follow certain procedures of turning.
Positioning mid-runway. Off to the left now.
So in this case, you can start lowering the aircraft down to 1,800 feet. As you descend, I'm just going to reduce my throttle because we don't need it to go down the hill. The closer we get to the ground, the more turbulent it's going to get. If you feel that's going a little fast, just pull back. That's it. You just don't want to scream at the ground like a nosedive. Coming up on 1,900 feet.
Altitude.
Now I'm going to start adding our cruise power again so it holds this altitude. So we're going to fly right over top of the middle of that runway. Contrary to what a lot of people believe, they think we could just come straight in over there and land. You can't. You can't. You have to enter this pattern. Because the reason why we do this is to ensure that we never collide with another aircraft. If we were all fighting for that runway, there would be a bottleneck and we could collide.
Yeah.
But if we're doing this procedure, we're going to see people coming from miles around, and everybody's going to be entering like this, and we all kind of follow suit in a queue. And the reason why we have to be 1,000 feet from the ground is it gives us all the ability at eye level to see each other, and it keeps us high enough off the ground that if in the event the plane was to get into a weird flight characteristic, we can correct before we hit the ground. If we're too low to the ground, you don't have much time to correct. That's why they keep it at 1,000 feet. That's the layman's explanation of this. It gets more technical, but so we're just going to pull the nose up a little bit more to get us back to 1,800 feet. Very good, man. This gives us a chance to inspect the runway. We look if there's, birds on there, coyotes, a tractor, anything like that. I'm just going to steer it a little bit to the right. I'll take control from here just because I want you to enjoy this.
All right.
And Midland traffic, Juliet Kilo Yankees overhead the field to join your mid-left downwind, 3-4.
Right now what the pilot's doing is I'm looking at the runway, I'm looking at the windsock, which direction it's moving. I'm trying to ensure that I'm landing this plane into the wind as best as possible. I fly this direction nice and straight for about 3/4 of a mile past the airport. Once I reach that mark, I'm going to turn left, 90 degrees in that direction. And this is what we call our downwind leg.
What do you use as your visual marker for that distance?
I'm using time right now, time from passing the runway. At this airport, this road is a good visual marker too. So this road is about 3/4 of a mile from the airport.
And Midland traffic, Juliet Kilo Yankee, turning mid-left downwind, 3-4 full stop.
So when I level this wing here, that runway should be right on the yellow stripe.
Yep.
And it is. That means I'm at the perfect distance to be in my downwind. That's why I put the yellow on there. Good for training. Training wheels on a plane. So in the downwind right now, I'm checking to ensure that everything's good with my engine. I'm looking at all this stuff, everything's in the green. I have plenty of fuel. All that kind of stuff. The reason why I want to know that is I want to know if this is a landing we absolutely have to do, or is this a landing I'm choosing to do.
Okay.
If it's just a landing that I'm choosing to do, then we're good to go. If you had any red on here, that would mean we have to make this landing work, and then I don't have any time to mess around.
Okay.
Towards 3-1. Midland traffic, Juliet Kilo Yankee, turning left base, 3-4. I'm following Mike Hotel Bravo on the back.
I'll try to show you that in-flight condition of the slip that you were talking about, the World War II pilots.
Okay.
Because usually it's very useful on the way into land. So what I'm doing is I'm slowing the aircraft down up into this white arc. The white arc signifies it's safe for me to put my flaps on. There's my flap. Here's my second notch of flaps. The flaps are acting like a big air brake hanging down underneath our wing.
Leaving altitude.
And I'm sure this is going to be a bumpy ride on the way down today.
Midland traffic, Juliet Kilo Yankee, turning final, 3-4, full stop.
And so what is the stall speed on this?
Stall speed on this is 38 knots. However, that's in perfect conditions.
Yeah.
So the approach speed of this aircraft is 60.
Okay.
So as long as I maintain from 60 to 65, we're going to be very safe. Now that wind is starting to beat me up. See, this is where I use those rudders. See how the nose feels like it's going that way?
Yep.
And now if I want to straighten that out, I push my right rudder.
Oh yeah, I can see the pedals moving.
But we're also creating a lot of drag. So when I'm doing that, this is the slip. So if I push harder on that and I go like this, oh, that aircraft's not wanting to slip with this wind. It's a strong wind.
I can really feel it bouncing around.
I'm straightening out on the controls now. Everything's getting a little more stable. So notice how the airplane's still crabbed into the wind. We're not straight yet. If I was to touch the wheels down like this, it would not be a good thing.
No.
So now I'm using my pedals to straighten out this nose. Dancing left and right, left and right. I'm still trying to fly the aircraft. And it just tried to lift my right wing there. Bird down on the ground, safe and sound.
Woo!